well, think about video games. If you started on the hardest level and went easier, nobody would play it because it's not fun. First of all, you lose steam.
I want it to get easier. Maybe that's what it is. I think I want to get easier.
Okay.
You know what I think it is? The reason it's hard to start a podcast with you, even though, so one of the things that has come up, the reason Jen and I have been wanting to do a pod is like, we've both been working like 9-to-5 jobs and then like calling each other on our way driving home.
But we weren't doing that when we started the pod.
Well, it was that we kind of went on hold because I went to Edinburgh. But I
mean, we weren't working 9 to 5. So when we started the pod.
But I feel like the reason we've been wanting to bring it back and do content together is because we've realized we've had these conversations that have helped me a lot, that I feel like instead of listening to a podcast driving home, I've been talking to you. And then it kind of gave us the idea of like, well, why don't we record ourselves talking about it and make a podcast about it? And the general theme, I mean, correct me feel free to add to this, but the general theme I've noticed about our conversations lately is it's about it's like this feeling, like we talk about wanting to like get to that next stage in life, but also feeling stuck and also trying to be encouraging, and how do we keep abreast of like the like negative feelings that come up when you're like feeling like, oh, I can't get past this hump, and there's like self-help and like wellness and manifestation and all that. And we talk about that. But ultimately, I think at the root of what I enjoy about our conversations is that there's a sense of deep connection and family, because it's like we're sisters that know each other. So like you can talk all day about manifestation, but like sometimes a lot of that can feel very empty unless you have like real support. And that's sort of what I feel like what I wanted to capture in our podcast.
Yeah, I agree. Well, yeah, on that note, I guess we can give the listeners a bit of context about I mean, I think in general, that's something both of us have noticed, that like maybe in our lives of where we're at now, but also I think overall in the industry, the like entertainment industry, but also multiple industries, there's like this feeling of like, feels like things have kind of slowed down a little bit.
The industry's dying. Everyone's saying that. It's true. And there's articles about it. People have left LA. Production slowed down.
Not just entertainment though, but yeah, largely entertainment is what we're talking about. But in general, like industry, like commerce, because I think the pandemic hit everyone hard, and then there was kind of the post-pandemic surge, and then now everyone's kind of accounting for that. There's a lot of debt. There's also a lot of just switch-ups that have happened. So I feel it kind of everywhere, because like we both right now working in different industry, or we are. I started a job at an airline a few months ago. I just put in a 2 weeks notice, so I'm going to be gone with that soon.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very exciting.
It feels like a weight off my shoulders. It's funny because I realized I put that on myself. It's not like, when people think about quitting the 9 to 5, it's like, oh, years and years twirled away. And I'm like, I literally just
for 6 months.
Spent a few months, tried it out, didn't work for me. But it does feel still lighter. I'm pretty excited to go back to being free to take whatever gigs I want now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, even in the airline industry, everyone's feeling it everywhere, so
it's interesting because I think so. Like I posted about this because we just celebrated our 35th birthday. It's technically our birthday weekend still, so happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much. I feel like birthdays do always bring up like sort of complex feelings, because it's sort of like another year around the sun, and it's like, unless you're having a Taylor Swift year, it's like most likely there's things you didn't accomplish that you wanted to, especially growing up in the Bay Area and having a high achieving like type A personality. Although to be honest, I feel like I've shied away from that. Like I used to be so type A, and then I've kind of tried to like lessen my own load by expecting less of myself, which I think has led me to where I am today, which brings me to why I feel kind of this general malaise, because that's also not who I am. Like I'm not someone who wants to lower my standards or expect less from others. I say that I'm like, oh, I just want to be comfortable with a simple life, and nothing against that if that's what you want. But I don't really think it's true. I think I still want to strive for like creating films that matter and connecting to people and having a high level, high standards and excelling. And I think I felt not motivated to put my whole heart and energy into projects in the last couple of years, because it's been met over and over with like almost success, or like things, just the rug getting pulled, or just a feeling of like, oh, it's never going to happen. And then wanting to just convince myself like, it's okay, I can just be kind of mediocre. But I don't really, I think that's where kind of like, that's what I don't want to say I'm mediocre, but like that is kind of the thought I kept having. Like, why don't I just not care that much? But the problem with not caring that much is like, if you don't care about something, it's not going to care about you. And that's where
bars.
Yeah. And that's where I feel I kind of wrote about this. I put it on Instagram, but like, and I, you know, people were really supportive, but it wasn't meant to be like a cry for help or like, oh no, I'm so sad. Although it literally was like, I do feel sad. And what I wanted to express was that like, this is the truth. This is how I feel. And I still want to share something on my birthday because it's a day of reflection. And so I wish it could be like, here's all the great shit I did and how happy I am. But it's like, that's not how I felt. So yeah, that's kind of, I think, a long way to say like, maybe other people, what I notice is that's what other people feel. And maybe that it would be helpful for people if we like dived into it and discussed that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you said there that I want to respond to. First thing you said about if you don't care about it, why does it care about you? Or what was the exact?
Yeah, if you don't care about it, it can't care. Or the way I phrased it on Instagram was like, I think I've stopped loving the industry, and if you don't love the industry, but I'm expecting to love me back. Like, and how can it love me back if I don't love it? Like,
yeah. You know? So that reminds me of like, you know, where attention goes, energy flows. Where attention goes, energy flows. Basically, like whatever you give your attention to, you're gonna get more of that, and then whatever you don't, you're gonna get less of that. And it's like, it's with anything. So with your goals, you just focus more on the thing. Sometimes your goals take you somewhere else, and then after a while, maybe you need to recalibrate. Like that's why I realized like I was genuinely interested in learning about the airline industry. I think I was more interested in traveling. So originally I was trying to be a stewardess.
Yeah, those free airline tickets.
Yeah, the free airline. I didn't make it to 6 months is when they hit, and I'm leaving right before 6 months. But so my energy was kind of on that. Manifestation is so, I don't mean it in a woo-woo way. It's just like whatever your mind is thinking of, that's what you're going to do, practically speaking. Mm-hmm. But it's like so inherent in everything. Like I remember I was making Pinterest boards just for fun and putting like travel images. This is before I even was like looking to work in the airline industry. And then this job popped up, and it's just like my mind was on travel and on flights. So when I was looking for work, I just naturally was like, let me look up airlines. So it's like a snowball effect. And then now 6 months later, I'm like, I work in an airline, and it feels so normal, but it's like, oh, my energy went there. So for a few months I wasn't DJing. I was kind of over it. That's sort of what for a few years I was feeling like stuck because I never set out to be a DJ, but I've come to terms, and I'm like, I'm very grateful for it, and I do love it again. I found the love, but I had to leave it to be able to find the love, because I didn't like feeling tied to it, that I had to do it. So I needed a break. And now that, enough, when I was at the airline, the first few months, like my attention was not on DJing. So naturally, like I was also getting less calls. It's weird how that works like that. Like where your attention goes, the world is going to reflect it back. And then as soon as I made up my mind, like a month or two ago, I hadn't put in the notice. I just made up my mind, like, I'm not going to be here long. I'm going to go back to DJing and doing other things. I do want to grow into being an artist, but I realized, like, for my immediate money-making solution, I was going to go back to DJing again. I didn't even put out ads or anything yet. I just, like, made up my mind. And that day I got, like, 2 new bookings from past clients. It really is like your attention reflects the world. It's interesting because I totally see that, but at the same time, I think what can be frustrating, and this is maybe what feeds into my general frustration with where I am in my life, is like I do the manifestation, I do the meditating, and I know there's more to it, and you have to believe it, and you have to keep going. But then there are times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm getting somewhere. Like I just recently was pretty much got offered a job because we were in the negotiation part, and they told me, you're done with interviews, we want to hire you. They asked me what I wanted to make, and then I didn't want to start
the negotiation with a number. So they gave me a range, and then I told them my number, which was out of their range. And because I wanted to counter, because the range was pretty low, but still more than I am making now. So, because now I'm temping, right? But enough that I would take it, right? But lower than but let's just say the range was what I was making as an assistant. So I'm like, my rate is higher, but I'm just not getting jobs, to be honest, that are paying my rate. And then after that, it felt like it slipped away, because then they were like, okay, the next step is a meeting to like speed up the offer process with a higher up. And then when I got into that meeting, the person I interviewed with started it over like it was a whole new interview. It was like such weird mindfuckery. And at first I thought they were doing a tactic, but it turned out that person just got hired it would have been my boss. And she had no idea what was going on. So she basically started like, okay, tell me about yourself. And at the end of the interview, I was like, so I know we're supposed to talk about offer. Like, I'm open to responding to, if you guys have a final offer. And she was like, oh, I didn't know about that. I'll give my feedback along, and then we'll let you know. And then I get an email like a few days on our birthday that said, because of internal whatever, like something, they said internal issues, we're putting a pause on this role. But wow. I can't help but think, right? I messed it up in that interview, or because I countered. And I'll never know. The way they put it, they were like, we're still interested. If you're interested down the road, when that time comes, we'll reach back out. But the whole thing is so weird, because they had been like, we need someone right away. We're going to like buckle this up in the next week. So that felt to me like one of those moments that sends me back, like all the work I've done trying to be positive and manifest and put your, like you said, your mind where you want to go. Like I know, but I'm just trying to be truthful right now, right? Like, because I think I get so stuck in the like, be positive, don't face the negative. That the reality is there is this bubbling malaise in general, like kind of frustration of how things keep going. And I know that it continues to manifest if you keep focusing on it. So I'm not trying to, but I do think there is some healthy benefit to talking about it, because I think it has just weighed on me so much. Like now I'm getting sad.
Well, you want to let it out. You don't want to, like, what if you're saying like, oh, let me just focus, like that's what they call toxic positivity. Although that term is kind of silly to me too, because I don't know, sometimes people take it too far to be like, oh, don't be positive at all, like focus, like just let all the negative out. It's one thing to like, you don't want to suppress any feelings you're having, negative or positive. That's the thing. If you're feeling it, you have to let it. It's like when they say in meditation, when thoughts come up, instead of trying to suppress them, you just watch them pass.
Just observe them.
Yeah, so let it come out and feel it. And then usually when you actually allow it in your body, it will just pass. It's like a cough. You just cough it out. But if you try to suppress and be like, no, I don't want to think about negative because I'm trying to manifest positive, what ends up happening is you manifest the negative because you're thinking about not thinking. Like your mind doesn't know positive or negative. It doesn't know like I don't want this or I do want this. It only knows thought. So it's like if my thought is on not getting the job, whether or not it's like I don't want to not get the job or I do want to not get the job, or I don't want to think about not getting the job, what you're going to manifest is the feeling of not getting the job, because the mind only knows feelings. It doesn't know like logical, like did it happen or did it not. It knows the feeling, that general malaise, that anxiety that you feel. I've had that experience too with auditions, like to the point where I'll get cast. Sometimes I'll even shoot it, like at the McDonald's one. That's the main example I can think of, because that was a big one where I don't always intentionally manifest. I mean, we're manifesting all the time.
But then didn't my friends see you in it?
We're
Maybe
manifesting.
It was a mistake.
No, they aired internet, but they never aired broadcast, which is where you make the big bucks. I was like making all these plans for paying off all my debt, whatever. But what happens is like we're always manifesting no matter what. But sometimes I will intentionally manifest something where I'm like, so that one I did, like, because I was testing out this method of like, okay, I did the audition, and then when I got the call back, that's when I was like, oh, maybe I can test this manifestation method, because I never like tested on something like that before. So I just, what it is it's very simple. You're not like repeating it over and over. Just like when you go to sleep. I just did it one time. When I went to sleep, before I fell asleep, I just imagined You have one very short scene. You don't even do a whole scene. It's like a 5 seconds, maybe a thing that implies it happened. So mine was getting an email from my agent saying, avail. Like I saw the capital avail in the subject and like, you're on avail. And then I did get the avail. So I was like, oh, I think it's working. So I was like, let me try the next step. You can also I think a lot of times they suggest you could also just go to the end, like go to it already airing. But I was just testing. I want to kind of, it feels like writing your own script for your series. So I went to the next one. I was like, okay, I pictured my agent saying booked. And she, at the time, my agent that I had was very enthusiastic. I really liked her emails, but it was like all caps, kind of like a lot of exclamation marks. I knew she would type it like that, something like that. So I imagined that. And I did get an email like pretty much just like that. And then, but that's when I was like, oh, it really works. And I started to psych myself out like, oh no, I'm controlling it, which you are, but you're also working with God or the universe or whatever, energy all around you. So you can't think like that. But I got in my head a little bit like, oh no, now
you're like drunk with power.
No, not just that, but yeah, but also like with great power comes great responsibility. I psyched myself out like, oh shoot, I don't want to mess this up. And I psyched myself into thinking like, I'm creating it. What if I have the wrong thought? Like, what if I start getting nervous about? So basically I manifested that because again, like what you're saying, I was worried about that happening, but your mind doesn't know that you're worrying about it. It just knows that you're thinking about that happening.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because I've also been thinking about this lately, like how powerful manifesting is. For people who don't understand it, because it just sounds like you say woo-woo, but the reality is like, it's not always overnight, but also sometimes you get powerful and you do that, right? You're really aligned, as they say. But I was thinking about how like I look around more and more, like this year specifically, like I'm seeing people I dated, people I was good friends with, people I gave their first show to, winning Emmys, like being on SNL. Like these are dreams that back in the day, they were dreams of mine. But I'm gonna be honest, like I haven't been like, I want to be on SNL. Of course, it doesn't mean I don't, but like actively not.
Your attention's not
I'm not actively like on the path to like auditioning or being a part of it. But when you see that, first you have a thought that you start to, the sort of like general thoughts of like, it's exciting, but you also go like, oh my gosh, like it happens. So you think like, oh my God, I'm getting left behind by success, my successful friends. But then I had a different thought. I was realizing like when I was young, like when I watched shows like SNL, I've always liked it, but I never thought when I watched those shows, I want to be on SNL. It was always like, I love this show. I love everything about it. I want to watch it. I want to be friends with people on it. I want to be around it. I want to be in a world where these are my friends and they're so cool because they are so cool. And I thought about that and I was like, that's my world. I look around on TV. I'm like, these are my friends on all the best shows, like winning awards, being funny, making culture. To be honest, a lot of them I've lost touch with. I'm not like close with a lot of them anymore. But these are people like started doing comedy with, like, like I gave, I booked Hannah Einbeiner on one of her first shows in LA and like things like that. Like, again, these are talented people. I'm not at all implying like I had any hand in their success. But my point is like, that is the image I had as a kid of like, I want to be around this in a world where I get this world. I'm backstage. And I didn't manifest far enough because now when I see it, how I feel is like, it feels like I'm still on the outside, but in reality, I got myself closer to the inside than most people ever will. Like, it's interesting. I mean, I have been able to go very lucky, like go watch SNL as like a guest of, people working there and like a director and, cast members and, go to the after parties and hang out. And it's really cool. But ultimately, I haven't ever looked back until very recently and recognized that like that's a world that I would have died to be a part of, like the life I'm living now as a kid. Do you know what I mean? To like be like, I've been in those doors. I know these people. I went to college with Bowen, that's cool. Like that's a world that when I was younger, I would have been like, oh, it would be so cool to like know these people. And that's true now.
I like what you said about, you didn't manifest far enough. Because I think a lot of times we forget that we do have the power. And it's like the universe or God is going to reflect back exactly what you think. Actually not always no more, no less. Because sometimes it does come back more abundant. God sometimes will be like this or better, right? But if you strongly have a feeling like, I want to be around it. And that's what you strongly have felt for many years. That's what you're going to get. And then you can adjust, be like, actually I want even more. I want to be on it. then you can level up that way. But like, yeah, it's going to return back what your energy is. And I would add too, like, if you're familiar, are you familiar with Neville Goddard?
Or like know the word.
Yeah, he was like a guy back in the 30s
like
or 60s
kind of stuff. Or
it's hard to put him in exactly description, but I would say like something like something of a mystic, I guess would be call it. Kind of like in the world of manifestation, a lot of people nowadays like to reference his stuff.
He sounds like some character from Harry Potter.
He was very interesting. Well, a lot of people gravitate towards him because he was one of the few, I feel like, that wasn't trying to sell you on something. He just like really was deeply in it. But so people gravitate towards his methodology. But anyway, I only brought him up because there's a term that he would talk about called signs of land. Is like, okay, if you're looking for the island or whatever, let's say you're shipwrecked, before you approach land, you may see birds or you might see seaweed. But then some people think, oh, I didn't get my manifestation. One of the examples he's given was like somebody wanted a really nice china. I might be paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact story, but something like that. You want a really nice china. And then she said she got a gift of like a broken plate from a friend that was really ugly. And she's like, this isn't what I wanted. But it was signs of land because after that, I forget how, but she did end up getting the nice china. But a lot of times...
Like you're 3D printing through your mind, but there's like models that are like... Oh,
it's like, is this what... It's almost like, is this what you want?
This is not good.
But,
but I
almost think that signs of land, when you like manifest, you want this for yourself and you're seeing people around you have it. It's like, no, don't stop here. It's like, actually, that's not the final form. So a lot of people do give up there because they think, damn it, I didn't get the manifestation. This is as far as it went. But sometimes that's just signs of land. It just means you're on the right track.
That's interesting. And I do think a lot about like feeling, and also as we get level up, and I do think we have. And I have to be honest about like, despite all the despair and malaise, like I've talked about the last few days, talking about it has helped. And I just want to be open very open. I want to be a big advocate for mental health because
there's a fur in my cup. Sorry.
There's a what?
Let's
talk about mental health and she checks out. No,
I was drinking water and I saw a dog here in my cup.
It's just the reality is like, we lost our little brother and that's a big part of the show I was doing in Edinburgh, and I was really deep in the emotions of it. And I think that did trigger a lot for me. And even now, like I'm doing my show in December again. And I'm like, for so long, I was like, maybe you already booked it and I made a flyer, but I've been like, there's a piece of me that's like, maybe I just won't do it. Like I've been afraid of doing the show. That's the best way I can put it. And every time I do it, it goes well and I feel great and I'm connected. But I think, so I was trying to process like, why do I feel afraid of it? And it's the same feeling of like, I feel afraid to like commit to being a creator again. It's almost this fear of having something. I do think it feeds into having lost Harry because it's this feeling of like
getting too deep and then losing it.
You get something you want and then everything will be taken away. It is true. But it's this like fear of having it get taken away. And I feel that deeply with I look at myself and go like, I'm not the person I was in my 20s. And in some ways that's good. But also I used to be like so organized and I'd be like, if I wanted to do something, I honestly am impressed with my 20-year-old self because there's days where I'm like, I don't know how I could even have the energy now I think I'll find it. Like that's the goal. But I'm like to direct a movie or to produce something with no budget and like get all my friends together and have it get into festivals. Like I did
That's also something you do when you're younger too. As you get older, less and less people want to do that. And also it's like, you feel like you have
but I disagree
responsibility to give back to them. When you were young, everyone's hungry to create for free. I'm
not talking about the free part. I'm talking about having limited resources and finding the resources for it, right? Like I paid people who I worked with in the past, but we worked with very little budget. Like I had the energy and excitement and now I feel like afraid to even start. And I think there's this fear. It's like, oh, so what? You get it. And then you have to keep it afloat. And it's like the fear of like, kind of like entering into the ring and then having to fight. And it's like, oh my God, I think I'm afraid of the fight. But that's actually the whole point, right? Like you don't get on SNL and then you're just on SNL.
You just made it, then you're done.
You get on SNL so you can do one of the fucking hardest jobs that everyone admits that being on SNL sucks. I mean, like, but they still want to do it. But it's such a shitty job. Everybody hates they want to kill themselves when they're in the show. Have to get like a, it's because it's such a toxic, no, it's just like a very stressful environment. And at the same time, so great. I'm sure people would be like, but also I fucking love it, you know, like, but you don't get there and then it gets easy. You get there and then it gets way harder. So that's kind of just to bring back to, I guess, my long point that I was trying to make. It's like, I do feel like we have gotten past 过关, in Chinese you would say. We've gotten past certain gates.
Like leveled up.
That have gotten harder. And when I look back on the ones that felt like 3 levels ago that used to feel impossible, I'm like, oh, we did do that. But where we are now is it's never going to get easier, to be honest. It's going to keep getting harder.
And you don't want it to.
Yeah, but
it's boring.
But it's going to keep getting harder to a point where you may not, if you don't actually sit back and reflect, you may never feel that sense of calm and ease for a while. And I think that's where I was, maybe I'm not manifesting that sense. Maybe I need to, but I think that's where I was struggling, is like, as I look ahead on the narrow and narrower ledge that I'm trying to tightrope down and walk, it's like, oh, I thought the further I got, it would be wider for some reason and more easy. Like the land, it would feel nice. But it's like, no, you get to the land, you got to till it, you got to build the house. It's still a fucking wild ass piece of land. It's just because you made it to land doesn't mean you're survive forever. Like,
yeah, well. That's a good point, because it does get harder, but I think it's designed that way. Life is designed that way because well, think about video games. If you started on the hardest level and went easier, nobody would play it because it's not fun. First of all, you lose steam.
I want it to get easier. Maybe that's what it is. I think I want to get easier.
Well, okay, think about a video game. If level 1 was the hardest level and level 10, let's say, or I don't really games, I don't know how it works, but let's say there's 10 levels. Level 10 is the easiest. People would stop playing the game because, first of all, it would just it would filter out so many people on level 1. Everybody who doesn't want to put in the effort would just give up on the game already. And the people who actually have the grit to get through it, and they're like, sweet, I passed level 1. Level 2, okay, it's a little easier. Level 3, level 4. Now it's just like, this is boring. I already did this. But you get to level 8, level 9, you're like, why am I playing this? We already finished the good stuff in level 1. So I think that it's exciting to have a challenge and conquer that. And then you look back and you're like, look at the mountain I've climbed. I don't think, even though it can be hard and in the moment you're like, I wish this was a little easier, I don't think you would enjoy life if it was just getting easier and easier. That's literally why we play video games. Like, as it gets challenging, it gets more fun. So the fun, I guess, could be the excitement of being in that and like, how do I solve this next thing? You got to find the enjoyment in that, you know?
It's so funny you say that, because right now, okay, so we went to a barcade a couple of days ago, and then Chris and I, we put $20 in and had too many tokens because we were pretty tired. It was after our birthday and nobody really wanted to hang out, which is fine. I was tired too.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was tired too.
Pooped.
And one of our friends, Amber, came, and we're all like, let's try to play a few games. But we realized we didn't need that many tokens. And so at the end we were like, oh my God, we all want to go, but like, let's try to like play one more game or give them away. So we played this Jurassic Park game. And then normally when I play these games, I die at some point. I'll sometimes add more coins if it's fun, but I never played to the end because you have to add a lot of coins to get to the end. And this time we had so many coins, we were like, I literally was like stacking them up. I was like, let's just go until like I can keep going, because I was like, we're going to give away these coins anyways. And so we were able to finish the game. And I realized like you can't really finish a game without coins. So it's funny, this is kind of a metaphor. It wasn't meant to be when I started saying it, but there's truly no way to do it without, you can't be like, it's 2 coins to play once, right? But you die, you have to keep adding to come back to life. But you can't do it. It's impossible, because the level does get harder to a point where like, it's designed where you have to die, and then to win the game, you have to keep adding coins. And that's okay. So it's a more expensive game to play. So a lot of these games say they only cost 25 cents, but actually to win it, you probably, if you're good at it though, you could probably do it for a few bucks, right? And it's fun. I bring this up because it got much more fun because the levels got harder, and I never got to those levels. And then it started being like, oh, this dinosaur's T-Rex shows up, and then it's like, shoot at this place in the mouth, shoot here. And then we were both playing, and so we'd add more coins every time we died. And I like load up, so it'd be like 6 credits, 10 credits. Like, now I could just keep going for a while. And we pretty much used up all our coins. I don't know how much it was, but maybe we spent like $10 playing it. I don't know, right? But it was really fun. And I'm sure if we were better at it, you could spend less money. But it's not really about the money, right? It was about, do I want to finish this game? And when you were saying the video game analogy at first, my thought was, I have been wanting it to get easier. I keep feeling like the early levels were so hard. I spent all of my cash that I have no more coins, but I still want to be in the arcade. So I'm only playing the easy games now. But in reality, what I think I need, because actually when you said that, I thought it, now that I'm talking about it, I'm excited. I'm like, that was such a fun game.
Need more coins.
Literally, I'm like, that Jurassic Park game was so fun. And what was fun about it, and it didn't feel hard. I didn't get stressed. And it never like got easier, but it got more, it was a pretty easy game.
You get better too.
It was an easy game. Like, I'm sure some games get harder. But me and Chris playing together, it was like really fun. And I realized like that's the feeling I want in my career, which I think is possible, but it's not what I had before. I started in environments that were so hard or toxic or built to haze you, kind of, to set you up for environments that only get harder and more toxic. SNL, case in point, which is, there are a lot of places that are dream jobs that are just built like that. I think what I want, though, because there are also places that aren't. And a lot of that, I love Kids TV, because Kids TV is when I get that feeling that I'm good at it. I have the coins. When I have the coins, I guess the equivalent of when they ask me to do a script, because I freelance. I excel. I do well. I get nominated for Emmys. Showrunners like me. They bring me back. That is the feeling that I want. And I do think it's possible. Now that I'm saying it, I'm like, yes, I can have this. But I think what I was getting stuck is I keep trying to play the games that are designed for you to lose. And some people can play those games.
Maybe they're not the right games for you,
Maybe.
Like you're saying, maybe you're playing the easy games or playing the games that are just not in alignment.
Yeah, I think I was switching back and forth between playing really hard games where I get to play it once through and then never play again, or really easy games. But actually, what I think I need to do is find the medium games that are
for you. Well, and level up. It's going to get harder as it goes, but you want to do it to your pace. To each, I'm trying to think of, there's a Bible verse or something. I don't remember, but it's like to each according to his, I forget the word, talent or something like that. Basically, everyone gets the concept, and like you don't have to compare.
I don't know why I thought booty when you said that. Booty. And then I just had an image of a big butt to be like, don't wear underwear that doesn't fit your butt or whatever or something.
Yeah, but that's a good analogy too, because when you look at fashion and if you're trying to pick clothes for your body type, but you're just looking at solely what's inside, and you're like, how come that doesn't look good on me? You have to pick clothes for your body type too. But that's what it is, and it's like, if you start on the level 10 and your skill's not up to par yet, it doesn't mean you won't get there, but you maybe have to play the other game first to develop the skill, and then you can play that other game. And everyone starts at different levels. So somebody could come into the arcade already being able to play the level 10. It doesn't mean you're worse. It just means you need to play the other game first. And in playing the other game, you also have fun. So it's not like it's a chore,
I actually think this is funny because I've never been a gamer, but I do really like games. And even just talking about that, I don't know if you can tell, but I clocked it. Like the beginning of this, I was like, I really want to talk about this, but I was feeling like really dreary and sad. And now we're talking about the games. I'm like excited. And literally all that changed was like the part of my brain lit up that was exposed to something new and fun. And I think what I've missed, and it's funny you talk about writing the script of your life, and I'm literally a writer, and I haven't felt inclined to want to write. And I think what I've missed is the excitement of the story, because the story has led to so many moments that I felt stuck.
What makes a story? Conflict and resolution. If you watched a movie or read a book that was like, Annie wakes up, she's peaceful, she has a lot of money, she sits on the beach, sips a martini, the end. Nobody wants to read that book.
Right. But the reason I've been maybe avoiding story in my own life is because I am afraid of maybe I don't know what genre I'm in. But it's funny you say that, because I recently was thinking like maybe something I used to do as a writer subconsciously is whenever things felt like I was stuck, I would give myself quote unquote character development by doing something, inserting conflict or changing the scenario. And that used to work, but I realized like just for doing that for that sake is not right. Like what I would do is like I'd move to a new city, or like you blow up a relationship or whatever, you buy a cat. Like I've done stuff like that because I'm like, as a writer, I'm like, what will drive this story forward.
That could be a coping mechanism to not wanting to confront the issue at hand. So you create another issue so you can deal with the other issue.
It's also like the forcing plot, because I'd be like, my life is stuck. I'm going to force some plot into my life, and then it will lead my character, me, to new growth and development. But in reality, like, that's not how it works. And I think after I posted that post on my birthday, my friend Brody commented and was like, because I said I've like felt like I just waiting for my act 3 and I keep feeling so stuck in the bottom act 2. And he said, that's so funny because I don't even think you're in act 2 yet. Like, you're still in act 1, right? In a like complimentary way, to be like, there's so much more. And I hope that's true. I think we just get
you're
scared.
Only in your 30s.
Well,
if you
I think
of
just
act 1, 2, 3, wouldn't 3 be like 70 to 100?
I don't know. I think it's the idea of like where the like purpose comes from, where, because you could have sequels.
Because if you hit your act 3 now, this is what happens with retired people who peak early. A lot of times they just go downhill because they don't know where else to go after that.
Yeah, sequels always go downhill. That's fine. I don't mind being a $1 billion franchise with a bunch of sequels that get easier and easier. Honestly, that's what I've been looking for. Life to get easier. But you're right. I think I haven't hit that, and I think I wouldn't mind if 50s was where my act 3 happened, hit my stride, and then 60s to 70s could be the sequels years, or the reboots or the spin-offs. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I think right now it does feel quite hard. I
love this analogy.
Well, it's true. And I think the reason I haven't wanted to write is because I've been feeling like in my own world, like, who even wants to read this stuff? But also up my own butt a little bit, be like, I would go back and read something I wrote. I'm like, this was really good. Like, but it went nowhere. And then I'll be like, ugh, like, why should I put energy into doing something like this again? But because I used to like it. I didn't write stuff to make it good. Like, so I wrote shit too, but like the stuff that I look back, I'm like, oh, this was good. It's because I got excited about an idea and I wrote it down.
Yeah.
So I think I should play video games though. Honestly, I've been feeling.
Conclusion.
I do feel like.
Moral of the story.
No, but like going to play games or going to see shows, it gets you excited for the story of life.
That makes you excited.
And it makes you feel hopeful when you see conflict, because someone has written a game that is designed to be hard, and then there's a solution. And I do honestly think I used to like shy away from video games because it was just not my genre. But now I'm like, yeah, actually playing a story game could really help with, I have tendencies to get depressed and like really anxious. I'm like, maybe playing video games. It sounds funny because playing video games is, I feel like, the old sign of depression.
No.
But
maybe
actually,
that's why people do it, because it's an
I
escape.
think it could help.
Yeah. Well, I think it also speaks to like the perspective shift. Like you were just saying, suddenly thinking about the game made you excited because you didn't change anything, but the way you're looking at it, looking at these obstacles as like, oh, it's a challenge. It's part of the game. Sometimes just shifting the way you look at it helps. I had a thought and I forgot. Go ahead.
I'll respond to that, but because what did make it fun was I played with Chris. I never like went to arcade games by myself. I do like playing with someone, and also having enough coins. And to be honest, I was never someone who would be like, let me throw a bunch of coins at this so I could win the game. The goal was never to win, but it ended up being so fun. We had a lot of coins. So there is something to be said if we're using that analogy of like, coins may not be money in this case, but it is resources.
Resources, yeah.
To keep playing. Like,
you can get those resources in different ways.
I do think what I need now, and it's okay to admit I don't quite have that, and I will find it. I'm going to manifest finding it, but I need a pocket full of coins, and I need a partner.
We
or
all do. Friends,
connection, people who want to be in the arcade, who I'm playing in the arcade with, because that's what I feel like I've lost in comedy. And I, partly on me because I've disengaged and not hung out with my friends much, but like I've lost the sense of like wanting like a people to play with. And I've had that before in people, writing partners and stuff, and for different reasons of moving away or difference in like people I've worked with that like we've grown apart, and so that has ripped that's been the rug being pulled from me of like these people I felt really close with, and for different reasons, in different scenarios. Some of them are still friends. We just don't work together anymore. But like, I've lost my like fun of working with people. Yeah,
I kind of feel that too, and I think a lot of people I talked to lately feel that. And so then you just have to understand that life goes through seasons. I think the key is not to is to realize that's not the final like destination. It's just a valley or whatever you want it. It's just winter or whatever. So, and then when I shift my mind that way, same as you, it gets me almost excited. Like, ooh, I can't wait to see the plot twist next. Like, you know, and it's like just allowing that and allowing the joy even in the hardship. I know it can be hard, but like, oh, I'm gonna. And sometimes a technique that could be helpful is like imagining yourself in the future, looking back, like, oh, remember when I was so depressed about this, like, oh, I'm so glad I'm out of that now, or like, oh wow, I've really come a long way, or I've really grown, or that really helped me to develop this thing, this personality trait that I've been wanting to work. It like challenged me and forced me to become a better person, because it really does. I think that's what those challenges are there for, is to force you to develop those character traits that you want to develop. Oprah said something once, and she was like, oh, I prayed for God for, I don't remember the character trait. It might have been patience. It was like, oh, I prayed for God to give me patience this year. And then like, it became like, it was like the most challenging year where people tested her patience. She's like, oh, maybe next year I won't, I won't pray for patience. But it's true. It's like, if you want to develop that trait, you're going to get hit with obstacles, because how else are you going to develop? It's like the gym. You can't just grow muscles by itself.
It's interesting because I just had an ADHD moment too. The looking back thing. It's interesting because it's I don't know if you ever get this, but sometimes I'll even look back on a time that was quite bad and I'll feel nostalgic for it. And I'll maybe because it's almost this feeling of like, well, if I go back, at least I know the script till now. Like, it was bad and then it got good. And then, so then I do wonder, you kind of said something about this earlier. I don't think we were recording, but like you said, like, do you put yourself in situations of conflict for the release? And I don't think I'm actively trying to put myself in conflict for a release. But when I look back and I'm nostalgic, like, I'll give an example. Sometimes I'm like, recently I was back in New York and I was thinking how like New York had so many ups and downs. I loved New York for many reasons, and I actually do feel nostalgic for that time. But some of the lows were so low, and I remember, you know, like feeling suicidal, like being like, being a huge alcoholic. There's times when it's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go to a bar and drink by myself, like, which sounds sad, but in the time it's kind of romantic, because I'd be like, oh, or I could go
New York.
Yeah, because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go home and be depressed, or I'm gonna go to this bar surrounded by people, and maybe something will happen. And really, what happens is I get drunk and I spend too much money, right? And then sometimes I'd get a burger, so that at least I enjoyed the burger, you know. And now I'm allergic to beef, so like, again, bad decisions. But I get nostalgic for that time, because of there's this feeling, it's like a sorrow, but it's a deep sorrow that's almost like, oh, it was so bad, it's good, you know. It's like, it hits so good.
I think that there's a term in
it's
Portuguese.
Like cutting. It's kind of like cutting.
I think that's what that
but
means.
It's the release, I guess. But I think now I don't want that feeling, but sometimes I look back on that time. I don't know if it makes sense. It's not the moment or the feeling, but that time of your life, and you go, oh my God,
you were at the time.
I go, I didn't know how good I had it, because I existed within the realm, I knew the boundary within which I existed. Now, right? I know I'm safe because I made it through. So I look back and go, wow, like I call that baby Teresa, right? That was very much a time when I didn't quite find Titi yet, but it was like Teresa's like roaming around, but technically there's like bumpers on. Well, I don't know. I guess I could have killed myself. Who knows? But I made it through. God. Well, no, I mean, I'm like, it feels like looking back, there were bumpers. It felt like protected, right? Yeah. There's like a divine hand guiding me because I made it through. And so I miss that, because I miss the feeling of knowing now. It's weird. It's like, I miss knowing now there was a divine hand guiding me through. But if I go forward, then maybe I can trust that right now there's a divine hand guiding me through.
There is. You're just moving through it. So yeah, I think the perspective is remembering that this isn't the end. People always like forget that, like, oh, this is, you know, you have to just know, like, oh, I'm just moving through life. And like, I like the analogy of thinking of like, oh, we came to this world to experience the world as it, because we're all spiritual beings.
Have you heard that analogy? People are like, it's always on TikTok. They're like, if you're on Earth, you picked level Earth, the hardest level. Like I see that all the time. Like
That's
they always
hilarious.
say like you as a spiritual being
Yeah, you wanted to
pick the hardest level. Did you know I don't know where these facts come from.
make it up.
But they go like, did you know in the realm of the spiritual places you can go to and reincarnate? Earth is the hardest level by far. It's hard. So it's like, okay.
That's funny. That's cute. I mean, it's something. I mean, I don't know if it's the hardest because I don't know what else is out there. But
We picked the hardest.
But
level.
this one, I think this experience, Earth or 3D experience, not just Earth, because if in the future we go to the moon, we're still in this particular experience that we picked. This one is about duality. I've heard that people say like it's not about trying to have world peace, although we should still strive to, for better, but peace comes from war and war comes from peace. So this particular experience, this 3D Earth, everything is defined by its duality, like night, day, war, peace, evil, good. The spiritual world doesn't have that. There's no morality in the spiritual world, right? Like God doesn't care if you're evil, you've killed people, or you're a saint. Like he's going to love you either way because that's how God is, because God is everyone, and God is. It's hard for human brains to understand that, but God has no morality. Even though, ironically, the people that push morality the most is usually religion. But there's only morality for God in the sense that everyone should strive to be best, and love each other. So in that sense, if you're like killing people, you're not showing your love. But anyway, I digress. But that's a whole nother topic. But the idea of doing those crimes is usually comes from love.
God does sound
on
like
a
a crime
spectrum.
boss. He's like a mob boss. He's
But
like,
so the idea is like in the spiritual world,
I smite you,
there's he's British too,
I'm gonna smite you. Legend.
the Cockney. But the idea of like the spiritual world not having that is like, yeah, because when we like, that's why they say rest in peace, when we die. But so we came here to experience it for some reason. Obviously, I don't know why, because I'm still here. I'm not a spiritual, but once we graduate, I guess we'll remember. They say like, oh, we forgot. We came here and we forgot it. If you look at the Bible with Jesus, that's the same thing, right? He came down as God, but he remembered kind of, but not like even on the cross. He's like, my God, why have you forsaken me? No, but my point, okay, let me get to the point. The point is just like, we're here to experience so we can grow our souls. We should try to strive to make the world better, but I don't think it might not actually happen. Maybe it's just like the video game. When you play the game, you just have to fight your way through it, and it's your personal experience. And through it, you're trying to save the people in the game. But like maybe the game is just designed that way, like that. This level might always have war. It doesn't mean we should just let it be and let it run rampant, but this level does always have crime and war, and it's there to balance. Like if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have the peace either.
I don't know if I totally believe that, to be honest, but
because when you overcome it, I think that's when you are in the spiritual world. Like when you meditate and we're kumbaya, we're not in this world anymore. You're in a different plane.
I think of the world. So I've thought about this, like the idea of heaven, hell, purgatory. I think they're all realms within the world, and they're places you can find. So I do feel like I've been in a bit of a purgatory. But I think if you end up in hell, like it's your life and it just never gets better. Maybe you can get out. I don't know. But like you go towards those vibrations. I do think personally, when it comes to war, that there is a way to get towards like that feeling of utopia and peace on Earth. And when you get there, it would be equivalent to what I think people describe as heaven. But at the same time, while you're in it, because it's a multiverse and everything exists all at once, hell exists like almost in tandem and parallel. You just don't see it anymore.
Yeah.
But the people who fight the war and choose to be in the negative space, literally, like it's almost like a kind of a quantum field, are existing in hell.
Still there, yeah.
And so I do feel like our world reflects how our outside world reflects us. As above, so below. The fact that you and I are in this world with such bad war, there is something on a deep internal level that we're not at peace with, because our outside world, if you want to like magnify that far out, that we're at war with ourselves. And the more you go towards peace, the more your outside world will be peaceful. I do believe that. And I'm saying all that, and I do want to be clear. Also, doesn't mean look so inward that you ignore the tragedy happening in the world. Like, be active, be like vocal, and actually like, like post about Free Palestine. Like, do it. Take physical action. I'm not saying just meditate all day and it'll go away. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you also, in addition to physical action, should be meditating and doing the inner work. Because I think if we're all doing that, I do think it does bleed out. But you do got to be physical as well.
I agree with you about the thing about heaven and hell being here. Like they talk about that in the four agreements. I don't know if you've read that book, but like hell is here. It's like when I forget, I'm not going to try to quote it because I don't remember exactly what he said. But yeah, it's like that state. It's the state of feeling like of all the negativity and stuff that you already feel here. So that is basically hell. And then heaven is also, we can reach, it's also a state. So everything is a state. But so what you said about like, so I think I kind of agree with you. What I meant by like, this won't go away, I don't mean it won't go away necessarily for you. It's kind of hard to conceptualize, but I do think it's something like what you said, like every soul's personal journey is going to go through that. And once you get to the plane of the higher, war may not exist anymore for you, but you're leaving behind this earth. You're just moving to a different plane. So I think this earth
on earth though.
Yeah, but maybe it's a different earth. Like it's a different plane. It's a higher vibration.
You shift.
But that the world with all the crime and killing, that maybe is still there. You're just not in it anymore. So I think, but yeah, again, we can't just like be like, let it. It's hard, but also it's like what you resist persists. So putting a lot of attention into it too, you're now feeding it. But you also don't want to just ignore it and let it. So it's tricky because that's why we're human too. We are gods, but we're also human. So you kind of have to balance that. But just keeping in the back of your mind, knowing like that's just a human experience, and there's another part of you that's like divine, can help work through it and not feel so like despair. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good place to sort of wrap up. I think I will say talking about this definitely helps. It doesn't make it go away. Like I know deep down there's still going to be bubbling feelings that like are going to hit me at times, and I'm going to be like, wow, what is my life? But overall it's true because that's how I feel. And you know, I don't think it's as simple as talking it away, but that what helps with talking is unlocking new patterns and new perspectives, like lighting up new neurons. Like now I have a positive experience talking about it, right? Instead of thinking like, oh, here we go again, thinking about my malaise. But in fact, I'm like, oh, we got to connect and we had this fun talk about, now I'm connecting to the barcade and playing the Jurassic Park game. And that was really fun. And so now I'm thinking like, I'm literally building the computer of my brain, like the neurons layering of like, okay, talking about depression, video games, hanging out with this sissy. And now I can be like, oh, maybe I extract video games and sissy and the depression becomes just a minor part. And then eventually we keep lighting up these two buttons instead. Sissy, video games. Oh, those come with happiness. And then eventually depression.
It just fade away. Wither away.
No, well, things in your brain don't wither away. But eventually.
Yeah, that's how neurons work.
Eventually it doesn't get called up anymore. It's a file that we're not opening that much anymore. And then you have to.
Like dendrites, if you don't use them, they just.
Some core memories, and this is why these feelings come up that much, and I think it is important to understand, as much as we talk about the woo-woo, the science behind it, the like neuroscience of it is these core like trauma feelings, they don't go away, but you have to be intentional about building new paths that become stronger. It's like rivers. The river what like makes the Grand Canyon over time. The Grand Canyon is not going to go away, but that one's pretty deep. But there are some rivers that are not as deep, and if you want to focus your water down another rock, eventually the other one will become more thriving or whatever. The ravine will always be there.
It dries up. The Grand Canyon
it dries up, but it's still there, right? The wound is still there. It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
I think it's important to think that, know that like
the
it's still very dangerous to
gone.
Fall into the Grand Canyon. So I think that's what I mean. Like you focus more on like there's water somewhere else. I guess the Grand Canyon is a bad example because it's so fucking big, but I'm just talking about the way like water flows. Like
skiing, that's an analogy I've heard. When you ski, you keep going down the same path, you're going to create a trail. But so now every time it's going to keep going down that one. But to make a new trail, you have to actually like take effort because it's going to keep wanting to go down that one. So when you're trailblazing, it's gonna take effort. But once you keep going down that one, now that one is a trail, and this one eventually it will pile up with more snow and it'll fill in. So
yeah, that's why I don't think that's a good example, because actually the science behind it is it doesn't just fill in. The core of these memories, like there is like literally
you'll still remember it, but it won't have the same emotional charge.
Yeah, you're talking more from the pseudoscience, which is okay, but like like literally the way the scientists describe it is like if you think about it, like a computer file, there's literally a file folder in your brain for all these different feelings and experiences, and certain ones, like experiences that don't even feel related, will layer because it's like the feeling of like, you know, abandonment, whatever, that will keep getting opened. But if you want to rewrite it or have a new folder, right, transmute or whatever, it's like the feeling of finding yourself. Okay, you keep focusing on that. That becomes the folder that gets opened more. But it's the work. That's why they call it the work. Continue for the rest of your life because this folder exists, the scary one or the despair. It doesn't go away. It doesn't calcify, whatever. It's like, I don't know, people talk about the calcifying pineal gland. It's not like the folder gets burned and deleted. It's still there. The other ones become stronger, but the work is, especially if that one, like in your 30s, is pretty strong already. The despair one is a strong folder. The work is remembering whenever you want to open it, a plan to open another one. But if you don't do the work, it will just fall back into the pattern. That is like a little more like how addiction happens too. So I just want to be clear that it's not like just because you are sober for a year, you'll erase the need to drink. It's like every day. It's like an everyday thing. You continue to choose not to open that folder.
I do agree that, it's there, but I think when you strengthen the other one, that one won't have the same charge. Like really great actors who really have I'm losing words here. Control is not the right word, but I'm going to say control. I can't think of the word. Who have mastery over their instrument. They're not just going to the depths of the emotion and just floundering and not being able to come out just to get a good performance. They actually know how to go there and come back. But I think that's when you've really mastered the emotions. It's like, you're right, the file's still there. Now you can actually use it as a color to paint your life without having that take over you. You allow it and do your character and really feel it. You really go there, and it really is tiring on your body, but then you know how to file it back. It's really hard to do that. That's why I have so much respect for actors who really truly are actors and actually doing it as a skill and not just like putting themselves in a state. Because everyone can be sad. Everyone can be, but can you actually use it as a tool and come back? That's hard.
Interesting. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. We'll catch you guys on the next.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.
See you guys next time.
Make sure you subscribe.
Okay.
For more of this if you liked it.
All right. Bye.